And to each and every one of you, thank you for the privilege of walking that picket line with you last year. Thank you for allowing us to lift up our voices. And in Minnesota, the work that you did, it didn't just benefit UAW workers, it benefited all workers.
Tim Walz making his pitch to auto workers in Michigan. Both campaigns are making multiple campaign stops aimed at working class Americans. In 3 of our swing states, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, that means union voters, with nearly 15% of the workforce in each state comprised of union members. That's a lot of potential votes. For more on the swing state battle for union voters, I'm joined by Todd Spangler, who covers politics for the Detroit Free Press. Todd, good to have you.
Thanks for having me.
It's no accident, Todd, that Kamala Harris will be in Detroit on this Labor Day courting union voters. What is her pitch to union voters so far in this campaign, and do you think it's working?
The pitch is pretty clear. First of all, it's to continue the pro-union agenda that the Biden administration has had since it came in, pushing for more expansion of organizing rights and walking the picket line, Biden becoming the first sitting president to ever walk a picket line before with the UAW. Another part of this is trying to remind union members that the Democratic top of the ticket looks more like them with Tim Walz and with some of Harris's working class background than the top of the Republican ticket. Finally, I think the big selling point here is just the level of enthusiasm that you're seeing with Democratic voters overall for the Harris campaign versus that lack of that enthusiasm for Biden before.
And Todd, to the Teamsters Union, which has a robust membership, we remember that their president spoke at the RNC and he was sort of snubbed by the DNC. Do you still expect the Teamsters to endorse Harris, or is that up for grabs?
I wouldn't be surprised at all if the Teamsters don't endorse in this race. Some of these other industrial unions have clearly moved ahead and just embracing Harris, embracing the Democratic ticket. But for the Teamsters, that's a little harder because I think they've got a larger part of their membership that is a little more conservative and wants to support Trump.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Teachers' unions also make up a reliable voting bloc in most of our swing states, and they've traditionally backed Democrats. Is that still the case?
Absolutely, without question, 100%. I mean, not 100% of the vote, but I mean, it's yes. There's the teachers' unions are absolutely going to be a big part of the Democrat push in the fall. And again, a big reason for that is not just that the Democrats have aligned themselves with the teachers' unions for decades now, but that, again, Harris gives them a chance, or at least a feeling of a chance to win that they didn't have with Biden.
Yeah.
And that enthusiasm is going to explode, especially among women. And you see a lot more women in teachers' unions than you do in some of these other unions we're talking about.
Yeah, good point. Finally, Todd, we know that union membership has been on the decline over a generation. How would you describe the state of labor, especially in some of our key swing states?
Yeah, I mean, actually longer than a generation, right? I mean, it's been declining for probably 20 years, 30 years, been dropping sometimes precipitously and sometimes, a little more slowly.
Yeah.
That said, in terms of public opinion of unions, it's way up. I've seen a Gallup poll here within the last week or so that suggests that 70% of people in the U.S. have a favorable opinion of unions. That's higher than it's been since the 60s. And there have been some wins. The UAW had a successful strike against the Detroit automakers. The railroads had a successful strike. The Writers Guild came out of their strike.
Right.
There have been a couple of job actions that have paid off. And that comes after the real gains that workers began to see post-pandemic. And as that started to change, you saw a lot of union leaders who did not want to go back, and we're not going to go back. And I think that's what's driving some of this. So you do see more public opinion in favor of unions than it had been for decades, but that hasn't translated yet into
membership.
Actual more union members.
Yeah. Todd Spangler with the Detroit Free Press. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Up next, is crime on the rise, or do we just feel that way? How that issue is playing out in our swing states. Battleground will be right back.
I think the auto workers are going to vote overwhelmingly for Trump because they realize that we need a good business leader, and a good business leader creates jobs.
The auto workers tend to, at this stage, be more Republican.
I think the Democrats do represent working people in this country. I think Joe Biden's record and Kamala Harris with him, their record in supporting working people is very strong.